Kim Deo sat in his black Mercedes, watching the clock on his dashboard. It was 6:30 p.m., and his housekeeper Yunhana was walking out of his building for 3 weeks now. Something had been bothering him about her behavior. She was still the best worker he had ever hired, but small things were different. Last Tuesday, he had come home early and heard her talking on the phone in a language that sounded nothing like Koreano or English. When she saw him, she quickly hung up and smiled like nothing happened. Then there were the packages, strange boxes delivered to his apartment when she thought he was in business meetings. When he asked about them, she said they were cleaning supplies from a new company. But the biggest change was how tired she looked. Hannah used to be full of energy, always moving quickly around his large apartment. Now she had dark circles under her eyes, and sometimes he caught her staring out the window like she was thinking about something very serious. Tonight, Daeho decided to follow her. He had built his technology company by paying attention to small details that other people missed. His gut feeling told him something important was happening, and he trusted that feeling. Hannah got into her old blue sedan and drove away from his building. Daeho followed at a safe distance, keeping several cars between them. He expected her to drive to her small apartment in the Hongdae area where many young people lived. But she drove right past that neighborhood. She kept driving past the busy shopping areas, past the restaurants where people were eating dinner, past the subway stations full of people going home from work. The buildings got older and smaller as they moved away from the city center. After 30 minutes, they entered an area Daeho had never seen before. It was full of old factories and empty warehouses. Many of the buildings looked like they had been closed for years. There were very few streetlights, and the roads were full of holes. Hannah's car turned into a parking lot next to a large grey building. The sign on the front said warehouse for 7B, but it looked like nobody had used it in a long time. There were no other cars in the parking lot, and all the windows were dark. Daeho parked his Mercedes behind a pile of old construction materials where Hannah could not see it. He watched as she got out of her car and walked to a small door on the side of the building. She took out a key and went inside. For 10 minutes, Daeho sat in his car wondering what to do. Maybe Hannah had a second job cleaning another building. Maybe she was meeting friends. But something felt wrong. The building looked completely empty. But now, he could see a small amount of light coming from one of the high windows. He got out of his car and walked quietly to the building. The small door Hannah had used was locked, but he found another door on the back that was slightly open. He pushed it carefully and stepped inside. The inside of the warehouse was nothing like what he expected. Instead of an empty space full of dust and old boxes, he saw something that looked like it came from a science fiction movie. Dozens of computer screens were mounted on the walls, showing strange symbols that moved like living things. The symbols were not Korean, English, Chinese, or any language he had ever seen. They seemed to glow with their own light and changed patterns every few seconds. In the center of the warehouse, there were machines that looked like nothing he had ever seen in his technology company. They were made of materials that seemed to shine like metal, but moved like liquid. Cables and wires connected everything together in patterns that hurt his eyes to look at. But the biggest shock was seeing Hannah. She was not wearing her simple cleaning clothes. Instead, she wore a black uniform that looked like something a scientist or soldier might wear. She was standing in front of a large screen, giving orders to 5 other people who were working at different machines. The other people were all young, maybe in their 20s or 30s. They were Korean, but they were dressed like Hannah and moved with the confidence of people who knew exactly what they were doing. One woman was working on what looked like weapons, But they were not guns or knives. They glowed with blue light and made a soft humming sound. A man near the back wall was building something that looked like armor, but it was made of the same strange materials as the other machines. When he touched it, the armor seemed to respond to his hands like it was alive. Deho stood frozen by the door, trying to understand what he was seeing. His brain kept telling him this was impossible. His quiet housekeeper who cleaned his bathroom and cooked his meals could not be the leader of whatever this was. Then Hannah turned round and looked directly at him. Their eyes met across the warehouse full of impossible machines and glowing screens. Deho expected her to look shocked or scared that he had found her secret. Instead, she looked relieved, like she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Hannah walked toward Deho slowly, her hands raised to show she was not dangerous. The other people in the warehouse stopped their work and looked at them. But they did not seem worried. It was like they had been expecting this to happen. "Please do not be afraid," Hannah said in a calm voice. "I know this must be very confusing for you, but I think it is time you learn the truth about who I really am." She reached behind her back and untied the simple white apron she always wore when cleaning his apartment. As the apron fell to the floor, Deho could see she was wearing a black vest with many pockets and metal pieces attached to it. It looked like something a police officer or soldier would wear, but more advanced. "My real name is Dr. Yoon Hannah," she said, standing straight and tall in a way she never did in his apartment. "I have a PhD in quantum physics from Seoul National University. I worked there for 5 years before I had to disappear. Now I am the commander of what we call Terror Defense Cell 7. Deho felt like his legs might give out. He leaned against the wall and stared at her. "Terror Defense. What does that mean?" Instead of answering with words, Hannah touched something on her vest. Suddenly, the air around them filled with blue light. Images appeared in the space between them, floating like they were made of light and air. Deho had seen holographic displays before in technology shows, but nothing this clear and detailed. The images showed us the scene from space, but round the planet. There were hundreds of small objects that looked like metal insects. They moved in patterns round Earth, always watching, always recording. "These are surveillance probes," Hannah explained, pointing at the floating images. "They belong to something called the Dominion Fleet. They have been watching our planet for 15 years, studying us, learning about our weapons and our armies." More images appeared. Deho saw giant ships that were bigger than cities, floating in the darkness of space far from Earth. The ships were black and covered with strange designs that seemed to move even though they were mad. "Year Metal, the Dominion Fleet is coming to take over Earth," Hannah continued. "Our governments know about this. The American military knows. The Chinese military knows. The Korean military knows. But their weapons cannot hurt these ships. Everything we have built for war is useless against their technology." Deho watched as the images showed Earth's fighter jets and missiles bouncing off the alien ships like toys. "How do you know all this?" "Because some of us have been preparing for 15 years. Hannah said. The holographic images changed again. Now they show people working in secret locations all around the world. "We are scientists, engineers, and physicists who decided to fight back. But we could not do it openly. If the Dominion knew we were building weapons to fight them, they would attack immediately." She gestured to the other people in the warehouse. "So we hid. We became invisible. We took jobs that important people do not notice. We became janitors in government buildings so we could access their computers. We became drivers for military officers so we could hear their conversations. We became maids and housekeepers so we could use the resources of wealthy people." The woman working on the glowing weapons looked up and smiled at Deho. I clean offices at Samsung, she said, but at night, I build plasma weapons that can cut through alien metal. The man working on the strange armor waved at him. I drive trucks for LG Electronics during the day. But the trucks carry materials for our secret bases, not televisions and phones. Hannah walked over to a table covered with devices that looked like crystals but glowed with their own light. She picked up one that was about the size of a smartphone, but much thicker. When she held it, the crystal pulsed with bright blue and white light. This is a human-designed plasma disruptor, she said. It took us 10 years to develop the technology. The aliens have armor that can stop any bullet or missile that humans have ever made, but this weapon uses principles of physics that they do not expect us to understand. It will cut through their armor like it is made of paper, Deho stared at the device. How is this possible? You have been cleaning my apartment for 3 years. You barely spoke English when you started working for me. I chose your household very carefully, Hannah said. You own factories that make electronic components. You have business contacts in 12 countries. You have shipping networks that can move materials anywhere in the world without attracting attention. For 3 years, I have been learning about your business while pretending to be just a simple housekeeper. But why did you not tell me? Deho asked. Why did you lie to me for 3 years? Hannah looked directly into his eyes. Her expression was serious but not unkind. Because until tonight, you were just another rich man who saw me as the help. You never asked about my education or my dreams. You never wondered why someone my age was cleaning houses instead of having a career. You paid me well and treated me fairly, but you never saw me as an equal. She paused and looked round the warehouse full of impossible technology. Tonight, everything changes. 2 days later, Deho stood in his main factory in Seoul, watching something he had never imagined possible. The production line that usually made smartphone components was now creating the glowing crystal weapons that Hannah had shown him. Workers who had been building computer chips for 20 years were now assembling devices that looked like they came from another world. This is incredible, he said to Hannah, who was standing next to him with a tablet in her hands. She was wearing her black uniform instead of cleaning clothes. And she moved with the confidence of someone used to giving orders. In just 2 days, you have changed everything. We had to move fast, Hannah replied, checking numbers on her screen. The Dominion fleet is closer than we thought. We have maybe 3 days before they arrive. And we need weapons in the hands of our people all around the world. Deho watched as boxes of the crystal weapons moved down the conveyor belt. Each box was labeled with addresses in different countries. Some were going to London, others to New York, Tokyo, Sydney, and dozens of other cities. His shipping company, which usually moved electronics and clothing, was now secretly moving the most advanced weapons ever created by humans. My pilots think they are carrying computer parts, Deho said. Watching another box disappear into the shipping area, they have no idea they are helping to save the world. That is exactly how we planned it, Hannah said. The fewer people who know the truth, the safer everyone is. Your pilots are good people doing their jobs. They do not need to carry the weight of knowing what is really happening. In the corner of the factory, Deho saw something that made him shake his head in amazement. 3 of his senior engineers were working with some of Hannah's people, learning how to build the strange armor he had seen in the warehouse. The engineers looked confused but excited, like children playing with new toys they did not understand. How long have your people been planning this? Deho asked. 15 years, Hannah answered. We knew this day would come. We have been preparing for a very long time. She led him to another part of the factory where workers were mixing chemicals. In large containers, the chemicals glowed with soft light and made the air smell like flowers and electricity at the same time. Deho had never seen anything like it. I remember now. He said suddenly, "The cleaning supplies you kept bringing to my apartment, they always smelled strange. And sometimes I saw them glowing in the dark when I got up at night." Hannah smiled. For the first time since he had discovered her secret. Those were not cleaning supplies. They were exotic matter catalysts. We used them to power our weapons and communication systems. I needed a safe place to store them while I was developing the formulas and the broken appliances you kept taking for repair. "Communication rays," she said, pointing to devices that looked like regular televisions and microwaves but had extra components attached to them. "Every time I took something from your apartment, I was actually installing a piece of our global communication network. Your apartment has been one of our main communication hubs for 2 years." Deho felt dizzy thinking about it. For 2 years, his home had been a secret military base, and he had never known. His quiet housekeeper had been running a global resistance movement from his kitchen. "The Dominion thinks humans are simple," Hannah continued, walking over to a map that showed the locations of all their hidden bases around the world. "They think we are primitives who fight with crude metals and explosives. They have studied our armies and our governments, but they have never looked at our janitors, our drivers, our housekeepers. They think smart people only work in universities and government buildings, but you proved them wrong," Deho said, looking at the map. There were red dots in hundreds of cities, each representing a group of people like Hannah who had been preparing for this war while pretending to have ordinary jobs. Just then, a young man in a black uniform came running over to them. He looked worried and was carrying a device that was beeping loudly. "Commander," he said to Hannah, "my name is Park Min-ho. I am monitoring our long-range sensors. We have detected the advanced fleet of Dominion ships. They are moving faster than we expected." Hannah took the device and looked at the screen. Her face became very serious. "How long do we have?" 72 hours, Min-ho replied. "Maybe less if they decide to speed up." For a moment, the factory became very quiet. Even the machines seemed to stop making noise. Deho could feel his heart beating fast in his chest. After all these years of planning and preparing, the war was about to begin. Hannah looked round at all the people working in the factory. Then she looked at Deho, at Min-ho, and finally at the map showing their bases around the world. When she spoke, her voice was calm but filled with determination. "Then it is time," she said. "Send a message to all cells around the world. Tell them that Operation Hidden Dragon is now active. Tell them that after 15 years of hiding, it is time for the world to see what humans can really do when we fight together." She touched her communication device, and Deho knew that in seconds the message would reach every hidden base on Earth. The secret war was about to become a real war. The morning sky over Seoul turned black as the massive Dominion ships descended. Through the clouds, each ship was the size of a small city, made of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. They moved silently, casting huge shadows over the buildings below. People in the streets looked up in terror as the alien vessels positioned themselves over major cities around the world. Deho stood in the command center that had been built inside his main factory. Through the windows, he could see one of the enormous ships hovering directly above downtown Seoul. Its hull was covered with strange symbols that glowed red, and weapon ports were opening along its sides. "They expect us to surrender immediately," Hannah said, standing at a control panel surrounded by dozens of screens. She was wearing a headset and typing commands rapidly. "Their plan is simple. Show overwhelming force. Demand surrender. Then occupy the planet with minimal fighting." On the screens around them, they could see similar scenes from cities around the world. London, New York, Tokyo, Sydney, Berlin, all had massive alien ships positioned above them. The ships were not attacking yet, but their weapons were clearly visible and ready to fire. "Are you ready?" Hannah asked. Looking at Day-Ho. He nodded, even though his hands were shaking. "Do it." Hannah pressed a button on her control panel. Immediately, sirens began sounding throughout the factory. But these were not warning sirens. They were activation signals round Seoul. And round the world, ordinary buildings began to change. The roof of Daeho's electronics factory split open like a flower, revealing a massive weapon platform that rose up from inside. Similar weapons emerged from shopping centers, office buildings, and apartment complexes that had been secretly modified. Over the past 15 years, the Dominion ship hovering over Seoul was the first to realize something was wrong. Its sensors detected the weapons appearing below, but the alien commanders could not understand what they were seeing. According to their intelligence, humans had primitive weapons that could not threaten their ships. Then Hannah's hidden weapons opened fire. Beams of blue plasma shot up from dozens of locations throughout the city. The alien ship's shields, which had been designed to deflect bullets and missiles, simply dissolved when hit by the plasma beams. The weapons cut through the ship's hull like it was made of paper. Just as Hannah had promised, direct hit on the shield generators reported a voice over the communication system. "The Seoul ship is losing power." From her command center, Hannah coordinated the attack with the calm precision of someone who had been planning this moment for 15 years. Cell 12, target their weapon systems next. Cell 19, move to the east side and hit their engines. Screens round the room. Daeho could see the battle happening in cities round the world. In London, weapons were emerging from the London Eye and Big Ben. Both had been secretly modified to hide plasma cannons. In New York, the Statue of Liberty opened up to reveal a massive missile launcher. In Tokyo, bullet trains were speeding through the city carrying mobile weapon platforms. "This is Lee Sungmin reporting from London," came a voice over the radio. Sungmin was one of Hannah's commanders who had been working as a taxi driver in the British capital. "Our plasma weapons are cutting through their hull armor. The London flagship is trying to retreat." "Confirmed," said another voice from Berlin. "The Dominion ships are pulling back from major population centers. They were not prepared for this level of resistance." But the alien ships were not defeated yet. As they retreated from the cities, they began to regroup in the countryside, preparing for a second attack. Their commanders were sending urgent messages back to their main fleet, asking for reinforcements and new battle plans. Hannah smiled as she watched the enemy ships retreating on her screens. "Phase 1 complete. Beginning Phase 2. She pressed another button, and suddenly the screens around the command center lit up with new activity. All around the world, people were emerging from their hiding places. But these were not soldiers or government agents. They were janitors, bus drivers, restaurant workers, shop clerks, and housekeepers. In Seoul, a woman who cleaned the Samsung building stepped out of her office wearing a black uniform and carrying advanced scanning equipment. She immediately began analyzing pieces of the damaged alien ship that had crashed in the Han River. In London, the man who drove trucks for a shipping company opened the back of his vehicle to reveal a mobile laboratory. Within minutes, he was studying alien technology and sending his findings to research teams round the world. In New York, a team of people who worked as subway maintenance workers emerged from underground tunnels carrying core toward alien weapons. They had been secretly boarding the damaged ships and taking everything they could carry. "The beautiful thing about the Dominion," Hannah explained to Daeho as they watched the coordinated effort on their screens, "is that they are predictable. They prepare for war against armies and governments. They study our military technology and our official weapons. She pointed to a screen showing a group of housekeepers in Tokyo who were successfully hacking into an alien computer system. But they never imagined that our greatest weapons would be our curiosity and our ability to learn. They did not prepare for war against human ingenuity. The tide of battle was turning in humanity's favor, and the Dominion was beginning to realize. They had made a terrible mistake. 6 months had passed since the day the Dominion ships first appeared in Earth's skies. Now, as Deho looked out the window of his office, he could barely recognize the world he had known before. The skyline of Seoul was filled with new buildings that seemed to grow toward the clouds like living things. These towers were built using technology taken from the captured alien ships, and they glowed softly with their own light even during the day. The building where Deho now worked was the most impressive of all. The Terror Command Center rose nearly a kilometer into the sky, its walls made of the same material as Dominion ship hulls, but redesigned by human engineers from his office on the top floor. He could see similar buildings in cities round the world, all connected by streams of light that carried information faster than anything humans had ever built before. "It is hard to believe how much has changed," he said to Hannah, who was standing beside him looking at reports on a screen that floated in the air between them. She no longer wore the simple clothes of a housekeeper or even the black uniform of a resistance fighter. Now she wore the blue and silver uniform of the Terror Command, with symbols on her shoulders that marked her as one of the most important people on Earth. The hardest part was learning to use their technology without becoming dependent on it, Hannah replied, touching the floating screen to move information around. "We had to make sure we understood every piece of equipment we captured, not just copy it blindly." On the screen, they could see live images from humanity's first space missions to other star systems. Ships that had once been Dominion warships were now flying through distant galaxies with human crews, exploring planets that no one from Earth had ever seen before. The ships still looked alien on the outside, but inside they had been completely rebuilt by human engineers. "Look at this," Deho said, pointing to a message that had just appeared on the screen. The words were written in symbols that looked like the alien writing they had seen in the warehouse 6 months ago. But now there were translations in Korean, English, and dozens of other human languages below them. "The Galactic Council wants to meet with us," he read aloud. "They say we are the first species in their history to not only defeat the Dominion fleet, but to capture their technology and learn to use it better than the original creators." Hannah smiled as she read the message. "They want to invite Earth to join the Galactic Council as an equal member. After thousands of years of the Dominion conquering other worlds, we are the first to turn their own weapons against them and win." Through the window, they could see one of the captured Dominion command ships rising slowly from the launch platform. But this ship no longer belonged to the alien fleet. Human engineers had spent months rebuilding it from the inside, improving its weapons, its engines, and its life support systems. Now it was ready to carry Earth's first ambassadors to meet with the leaders of other worlds. "Do you remember what you said to me that night in the warehouse?" Deho asked. "You said the Dominion thought humans were primitives who fought with crude metals and explosives. They made the same mistake that many people make," Hannah replied. "They judged us based on what they could see on the surface. They saw our armies and our governments and our official weapons, and they thought that was all we had." She walked over to another window that showed the city below, in the streets. People were going about their daily lives, but everything was different now. The buses were powered by clean energy taken from alien technology. The buildings were stronger and more beautiful than anything humans had built before. Even the street lights were brighter and used no electricity from power plants. They Never imagined that our taxi drivers were actually brilliant engineers, Hannah continued. They never thought that our janitors might be quantum physicists, or that our housekeepers could be military strategists. They saw weakness where there was actually hidden strength. The story of how Earth had defeated the Dominion was already spreading to other worlds. Alien visitors who came to see the captured ships could hardly believe that the resistance had been organized by people working in ordinary jobs. The idea that a housekeeper and a businessman had become the leaders of humanity's golden age was something that amazed beings from across the galaxy. The other worlds want to learn from us, Deho said, reading more messages that were appearing on the screen. They want to know how we organized our defense, how we kept our best people hidden, how we turned our entire civilization into a weapon without anyone noticing, and we will teach them. Hannah replied, but more importantly, we will make sure that no species ever again has to hide their brightest minds just to survive. As they watched, another ship lifted off from the launch platform. This one carrying scientists and engineers to establish humanity's first colony on a planet in a distant star system. The ship disappeared into the blue sky, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of an entire world. The former housekeeper and the businessman stood together, looking out at a future that seemed brighter than either of them had ever dared to imagine. They had proven that when human potential is finally unleashed, even the universe itself must make room for what humans can achieve.